I'm Jen Andreas. I'm a faculty member for WSU Extension, based in Puyallup, but working statewide. So I'm going to talk today about specifically knotweed biocontrol, but always open to have conversations about other types of biocontrol. Okay, so just to give you a sense of the program, as I mentioned, we are statewide, and there is currently me as the director, and then Trish. Trish is our current team member. So if you have questions, she's doing lots of the knotweed work as well. We are currently hiring. I hope to have the position description out hopefully tomorrow. So if you know anyone who is looking for some summer work in biocontrol, please let me know. We provide biocontrol releases and evaluations. We're doing a lot of outreach activities. We're involved in several different research projects. Today I'll talk about knotweed, but otherwise we're really kicking off flowering rush, Scotch broom, and actually we have a few more that are Eastern Washington weeds that are very exciting. So we have a lot going on. So this project is primarily funded through grants and contracts. So Forest Service is our biggest funder, but we receive funding from the state, USDA AIPHIS and ARS, and then several county noxious weed programs are generous enough to provide support. Sorry, I keep losing my mouse on this thing. All right, I think it's always helpful for us to start with a really quick description of what biocontrol is, so we're all on the same playing field. Most people understand the herbicide part of it, but maybe the biocontrol part is a little bit new to you. So biocontrol is the intentional use of one living organism to control or suppress another. So in our program, we're using insects, mites. We're going to be using some pathogens this year, and nematodes are theoretically possible, but we don't really use them. So just to give you a sense of how the kind of biocontrol that we use differs from other types of biocontrol. So there are a couple of different types, and it can be easy to confuse them. So I think it's helpful to run through them. So there's a type of biocontrol called augmentative biocontrol, and this is where you're doing periodic large releases of a biocontrol agent in order to reduce your pest problem in a really quick way. So if you've ever purchased ladybugs or lacewings for your garden for aphid control or other pest control, that's a type of augmentative biocontrol. There's also conservation biocontrol, and this is where you manipulate the environment in some way in order to encourage natural enemies to move into your site, feed on your pests, and they just kind of live together in there. Now, this is often mostly done with insect pests, often in orchards. So you may have a pest up in your trees, and you plant vegetation underneath the trees that is encourages natural enemies. So they live down there, they go up to feed. And then there's cultural biocontrol, and these are things like using goats or geese, fish, that all falls under cultural. But the type of biocontrol that our program is using is classical biocontrol. And that's a very specific type of biocontrol. This type of biocontrol is based off the theory that tries to explain why our invasive plants are so good at invading when they come into a native range. So this is called the enemy release hypothesis. You don't need to remember it, but it essentially says when a plant comes into a new range, they are released from all of the natural enemies that keep their populations in check in the native range. So looking at our native plants, they have a whole suite of things that keep their populations in check. When the weeds come here, they don't have those things keeping their populations in check. So what we do is we go back to where the plant is native. We go back to where the plant is native to, and we look at what's attacking it there. And what we're looking for is something that can cause significant damage to the plant. And we also want something that's very host specific. So we don't want to be releasing things that are going to cause future problems. So we're looking for a relationship between a potential biocontrol agent and a weed that is very closely co-evolved, and so they do not attack other species. So after lots and lots of years of testing, and I'm happy to always have that conversation, I won't have time to go into it today, what that looks like, it is then approved for release within North America to become a biocontrol agent. And the goal is really that we're looking to achieve the balance that we see in the plant's native range. So these are all of the different weeds that we have biocontrol agents currently available for. the ones in blue are ones that might be of most interest to people on the west side. I realized in the middle of the night last night that there are 2 new ones, Russian thistle and garlic mustard. Garlic mustard just got approved. So we are going to be starting projects on those. So if these things are of interest to you, let me know. All right, I don't need to go into the different knotweeds since you're probably all pretty clear on your knotweeds. But one thing I will say, and I think is often confusing, is there's often some confusion about whether we have Japanese knotweed or hybrid knotweed or Bohemian. I call it hybrid, sorry. So what we do know from a lot of testing, genetic testing, is that for the most part in Washington, we have giant knotweed and we have the hybrid knotweed. I have only seen, in all the knotweed I've looked at, probably 2 tiny sites that I feel confident to say those are probably Japanese. So just letting you know, we're mostly talking about hybrid. So we have a newer biocontrol agent. So as John mentioned, this is a long study. It took a long time to get this biocontrol agent approved for the United States. So we finally got it approved in 2020, and it is a sap-sucking psyllid. So I passed around vials of them, so hopefully you were able to see them. You can see we have a very tiny insect to deal with a very large plant, and so it makes it quite challenging. We have 3 strains that we have released in Washington. The Kyushu strain, which is for Japanese and hybrid. The Hokkaido strain, which we use for giant, and the Murakami, which we're using on the hybrid. And that one's brand new. The kind of damage they can do is twisting and binding the leaves, but it doesn't always do that. It depends on the strain. The goal that we're looking for is not that we're going to necessarily see knotweed dying en masse in the field, but what we're going to be seeing is that the plants are more sickly and they just don't have the competitive advantage like they used to, and that will allow other species to take over. So in terms of our rearing, if you stick around for the tour, you'll be able to see some of our rearing production. So this is what rearing looks like. We're continually rearing in the greenhouse. And then we are doing all 3 species, though one, I think we're going to eliminate the Kyushu. And all of this work is funded by WSDA, who has been an amazing partner. So thank you guys. And also AIPHIS has been funding. So what kind of releases have we done? We've done releases for the last 5 years. We've looked at 36 release sites. We've tried multiple strategies. So we've tried just releasing adults, which you can see in the free releases. We've tried sleeving the plants, where we put the adults into the plants to force them to stay on those plants. Didn't work so great. Unfortunately, the plants usually just fell over. We've put out cages into the field and allowed the psyllids to move themselves out. My feeling is that the spiders just move themselves in. And so that hasn't been so great. So we're really focusing now on putting out potted plants where we are able to put out all stages. So there's eggs there, there's nymphs of different sizes, and there's adults on those cages. We're typically putting about, at early releases, we're getting up to maybe 300 a release, but we are, at some of our sites, we've put up to 10,000 out at a single site. So these are the release sites that we have so far. The Yakima I threw in, but we've lost that site since, so it's mostly all Western Washington. Some of our Kyushu sites, we have switched over to Murakami because I think it's probably a better strain. And we also have some sites where both giant and the hybrid is present, so we're releasing them both there. We have lost a number of our sites to floods, human disturbance, lack of safety to be at the site, those sorts of things. But we have been able to visit some sites over and over again. So our focus now is really on the Murakami strain. We really want to put most of our effort into putting those out. So once we release, then we start trying to figure out whether those psyllids are there. So initially when we started, we were doing both collecting insect data and plant data. I have put the plant data collection monitoring on hold. It's just for lots of reasons that we could talk about later. But otherwise, what we're doing is we go back to the site every 2 to 4 weeks, and we're looking for Can we find any insects present at the site? Are there population changes? We're looking for any signs of damage. So the pictures in the middle are signs of the damage that the Hokkaido on giant will cause. So you get these twisted up gnarled leaves in the field. We're looking for whether the psyllids are dispersing. And we always keep our eyes open for non-target effects. So what have we been finding? Okay, so initially in 2020, we went about this with a really classic biocontrol strategy, which is you want as big an infestation as possible and fewer sites in order to really closely monitor those few sites. And then you always want lots of plants on a site when you do biocontrol. What we found was that the psyllids are tiny, tiny, and the plants are very, very big. And so we started to feel like the sites got so big, we could not tell if they were there. So then so those sites were sort of a hit and miss. A couple of them didn't really make it. So then for the next couple of years, we went with really small sites and with the hopes that we'd find the psyllids. It still has been kind of not great. I mean, we can come back throughout a season and find signs of the psyllids, eggs, nymphs, larvae damage. But then the next season, it's been hard to find them again. So we don't really know what is going on. So in 2025, we sort of threw everything out. We'll just do it all. Give us a site, we'll put out insects. We tried to do small sites up to large sites. We did very large releases, minimum typically around 5,000 psyllids at a site. And we still found that the psyllid recovery was pretty variable. This has just been a real challenging project for us in lots of ways. I mean, is the psyllid just is it not surviving on the site, or is it surviving? But we very quickly, the knotweed outgrows us. So we know that the psyllids typically like to be in the sun. So it's very possible they're very up higher on the plants. And, you know, I showed this picture here because this is in May. This is a giant knotweed site. We have cut through a path here. The plants are already taller than I am here. They're growing up to 15 feet tall. So we very quickly can't tell if the psyllids are there because we can't actually reach them. And we've tried all sorts of strategies, ladders, tried to take cameras, those sorts of things, and it just doesn't work. So I would say that we're still really in the infancy phase of this biocontrol project. I think we're still learning a lot. We know that in Oregon, they have at least one site where they are getting continual establishment for, I think we're at 4 years or something. And so, you know, what is it different about that site than maybe what we're seeing? I think there's still a lot for us to learn. So we're still looking for sites. We're still getting insects on the ground, and we just want to keep looking for them. So some of the things we should expect if we're using biocontrol is, again, those plants are going to be stunted, not killed. So we shouldn't be looking for mass destruction. It is not going to be appropriate for every single site. So you can see in these bottom pictures, this is out on the hump tulips, and this is a creek off the hump tulips. This was our very original giant knotweed site on the giant knotweed site on the left. We were assured that this creek never floods, and every single year it floods in the most dramatic way. So everything you can see on the left side at the bottom of that is a sandbar where the plants are massive, and then every single winter it just gets ripped out. And we just don't think the psyllids probably can handle that kind of disturbance. On the right side, you can see this is all knotweed growing up on the edge. This has all just been shaved off over winter flooding. So again, we're trying to keep sites, do initial sites where there isn't this kind of constant winter disturbance. Okay, so 2026 and 2027 priorities. I don't know how much longer we're going to continue with the knotweed program. I think we are going to try. I've requested funding for this coming year and the year after, but it's a lot of work, and I'm unsure of how much value we're getting out of it and how much interest there is. So I think this is sort of a call out to any of you if you would like to partner on putting out some knotweed releases on your properties. This is a great time to do it. So we're going to focus on the Murakami strain. We're going to continue to do some of the giant knotweed Hokkaido strain, and we're continuing to monitor all of those sites. As I said, I think we're going to eliminate the Kyushu strain, so I think we've got lots of things to do with the other two. And we are looking for more sites and increased partner inputs. So these are some site criteria. I used to have the like longest list of criteria that I was hoping for, but kind of throwing it all out the window. So these are the things that I would like to see. Small to medium, but we could go large. One thing that is critical, no other control activity. Because if you're controlling your knotweed in some way, if you're killing off your knotweed, you're going to kill off any biocontrols. So we can't have other control methods happening. Reduce disturbance. If we can get an upland site, that's great. So we can go back and monitor it and know that the plants and everything is going to be there. Generally, I'm looking for a 5-year commitment. I think I'm pretty comfortable with 3 at this point, and we'll see what we can reevaluate after 3. One of the challenges that we've found in our work with the knotweed sites is that they're not always that safe for visiting. And because we visit a lot, we want, not only do we want safety in terms of being safe on the river systems, but we have found there's a lot of transient populations in knotweed. You may have noticed that as well. It's a very unsafe place for us because we have magnifying glasses on and we are deep in the knotweed and we're deep in thought, counting or looking for insects. And so it's hard to keep track of what's going on around us. So we are looking for sites that are safer, where we can feel like we can visit those sites. I'll add one more thing really quick is one of the hardships for us as a program is when we go visit those sites, because we're doing it every 2 to 4 weeks, it's a lot of driving for us. So one thing I'm hoping is one of the reasons we go back is because we put the knotweed pots out in trays. We don't want to add a new knotweed strain into your knotweed. And so we always keep everything contained. But those plants, especially in the summer, need water. And so we go back and we do monitoring for insects, but we also have to fill all those trays. And so that might be some commitment I'm looking for this coming year, is somebody just go add water to the trays every couple of weeks. So that's kind of what we're looking for. If you're interested, please let me know. I'm going to be starting to pursue sites probably in the next couple of weeks. All right, with that, I will wrap it up. I do want to mention that we have a Biocontrol 101 curriculum where you get a certificate at the end. And so if you're interested in biocontrol and knowing more, you can go to the Biocontrol 101 curriculum. We've also created biocontrol and weed fact sheets for all systems, all weed biocontrol systems in North America thus far. So there's something like 47 systems or something. Many of them won't apply. Lots of Florida ones, that kind of thing. But if you're interested in that, here's a QR code for that. Okay, thanks.